Hey, church family, thanks for joining me. We're looking at, in times like these, we're looking at John Wesley, and the question, is your doctrine too strict? Is the way to heaven too narrow? That was the accusation that the Protestants of Wesley's day made at him, and I think it's a fascinating topic because we're moving away from reformers who dealt with Catholics to reformers who were dealing with formal, dead, spiritually dead Protestants. And by the way, I just want to thank you for joining us. I hope that you're spiritually growing. I hope you learned something. Thank you for joining Andrew and me as we share some of these thoughts. So here it is. John Wesley has a profound personal experience. He's on a ship. The water's pouring in. The mast breaks. The English are screaming. And he looks over to the side, and there's these devout, pious German, Moravian Christians, and they're calmly singing. And it profoundly affects him. He says, aren't you afraid to die? No, we're not afraid to die. So he studies with them, and he discovers that rather than relying on his endeavors for salvation, he can rely on the sacrifice of Jesus Christ, on his grace. And it so profoundly moves him, just like it did, the generations 200 years earlier of Protestants in England. It moves him. And so now he says, the whole world is my parish, and he starts preaching the truth. Now he's not battling Catholic rituals and mysticism. He's battling dead formalism, Laodiceanism. He's battling a neglect of Bible truths. And the accusation arises from these other church members. They don't like him. And they say he's fanatic, he's a Quaker, he's Pope, he's popery. But, quote, others alleged their doctrine is too strict. They make the way to heaven too narrow. And this is, in truth, the original objection, and is secretly at the bottom of 1,000 more which appear in various forms. The Methodists were making the way to heaven too strict. And they didn't like it. And John Wesley is teaching people, hey, Jesus is so amazing. Not because you want to earn salvation, but because you love him. Live a sanctified life. They called them methods, or the enemies, their revilers and ridiculers called them methodical Christians. And that's why they're called Methodists. They were methodical in their approach to sanctification. But Wesley taught that, hey, if you really love Jesus and you really want to be close to him, you're going to live a sanctified life. And you know what? He's right. He's absolutely right. And I think it's a really good question for us to ask ourselves in this day and age of being a Seventh-day Adventist. And here's the question. Have we made salvation too easy? Have we made it what I call a drive-through religion? You know how it is? You go to Taco Bell, or you go to, I don't know, where'd you go to, McDonald's, and you roll up into the window, and they always say, hey, how are you? And you never have a deep conversation. You say, hey, I'm fine, but let me tell you what I want. I want 2 burritos, add some packets of sauce, and a complimentary water. Oh, great, that'll be $2.85, whatever it is. And you drive up to the window, you exchange the dollars, they give you your food, and you head on with your life. It's not a big commitment. Doesn't take a lot of time. You got the food you needed. Your stomach is full, and you get to do what you want to do. I think that's really how people approach God. Like, hey, God, I need some things from you. I need a little freedom from some of these addictions that are ruining my life. I need a little assurance. I'm kind of afraid about what's going to happen in my world. God, would like to know that I'm not going to go to hell. I'd like to go to heaven. I don't want to die eternally. God, can you help my relationships with my family? Because right now we're not really happy, and I want to be happy. It's important to me. And then, so we feel like we got to exchange something with God. And so we try to give him a little token of worship or allegiance or something. And God is not a drive-through religion. He's just not. He was a sit-down God. He says in Revelation 3, come in and sup with me. Come and eat with me. Take some time. Let's talk over food. Let's get to know each other. Let's have a deep, personal, ongoing meaningful relationship. And I really believe, in a sense, that religion can be too strict, in the sense that we can tell our young people that it's all about your behavior. And I think, I think our young people are very much aware that salvation doesn't come because they don't eat pork and they keep the Sabbath and they pay their tithes. Like, they know salvation doesn't come from that. It comes from Jesus. I think our young people have very much heard that and get that. What I am afraid is that in feeling like they have to reject a requirement of behavior, they throw out a requirement of principle. And what I mean is, if you're going to have a meaningful relationship with Jesus, it's a serious thing. It's an all-encompassing thing. And for the heart, it's really scary to surrender itself fully to Jesus, because he's in charge. We're happy to make an exchange. Let me go to church every now and then. Let me throw in my 2 mites in the offering plate. But please, don't take over my life. And I think when God comes and he says, listen, I want you to love your neighbor, and I want you to love me with all your heart. The way to hell is wide. Narrow is a gate that leads to life. Few there be that find it. There's few people who really listen to God and really live out the life he's calling them to live. Because we all struggle with obedience. And there's a lot to this, but the point that I'm making is that Christianity is a significant, serious commitment. And to tell, for our young people, or even our older adults, to think that it's merely fire insurance is a misrepresentation of the gospel of the Bible. I'm sorry, you're not saved for eternity if you think that one night 20 years ago you accepted Jesus and you got that covered. No way. Neither are you saved because, you keep certain behaviors and you think that that's going to justify you, and that's all that God requires of you is a behavior change. It's a heart change. And so, I think the seriousness of God's involvement in our life, it often is overwhelming. And without the joy of conversion, many people want to go the antinomian route, where the law is no longer obligatory, no longer binding. They want to lessen the claims of God. And I would like to say, let us as a Seventh-day Adventist people, let us never be accused of making the way to heaven too strict with behavioral requirements. But yes, let us be accused of making the way to heaven strict with the longing, loving entreaties of Jesus, who wants to be closer to us. Yes, yes, yes. And that's what I hope we can learn from today's lesson from John Wesley.